Growing up with a toxic parent can have far-reaching consequences on a child's psyche, even after turning into an adult. When your childhood is enmeshed by a toxic parent and you fail to realize it. Although the majority of parents truly strive to provide their children with a healthy upbringing, they frequently make mistakes. Being a parent is a difficult job that relies heavily on intuition and instinct. Sadly, there are some parents who go beyond the occasional error and become toxic. There are a number of parental actions that have a significant psychological and emotional impact on the child, regardless of whether the parent is intentionally toxic. As the child grows older, this always affects the child's mental health as a whole. If any of the following happened to you as a child, it's likely that one or both of your parents were toxic, at least in some way. 12 signs you grew up with toxic parent. 1. They fail to provide you with affirmation and security. Some people believe that showing careless love to your children is an important way to make sure they will be able to take care of themselves in the future and become independent. If you received this parenting style on a regular basis, you might have been deceived into thinking that it was the behavior you deserved or the treatment you needed to improve yourself. If you seem to be falling apart now because you think you failed or been rejected, it probably comes from a toxic parent who didn't give you enough security, contentment, and validation when you were young. Tough love may be effective at times, but if a parent wants their child to have a positive future, it cannot be the only strategy. 2. They are overly critical. Parents should occasionally provide their children with praise and criticism for their actions. We might never learn how to do a lot of things correctly without this part, like doing everyday tasks like washing clothes, making food for ourselves, ironing clothes, organizing our belongings, etc. This gets even worse when a toxic parent is critical of everything their child does. The children will suffer severe consequences for even the smallest errors they make. Some of these criticisms come in the form of poisonous verbal abuse in the form of insults, explicit, harsh facial expressions, and neglectful body language. Other criticisms come in a variety of forms. This strategy will only backfire because some children will eventually make more serious mistakes and develop a negative self-image and self-loathing. It's easy for parents to fall into the trap of thinking that doing this will prevent their children from making costly mistakes. Sadly, this behavior actually leads the child to develop a negative internal conflict that can become almost crippling as an adult. 3. They demand your attention. By constantly demanding their children's attention, toxic parents frequently turn their children into their own parental substitutes and dumping grounds for their own frustrations. This may appear to be a bond between the parent and the child, but in reality, it is a parasitic relationship that consumes the child's time and energy when they should be working on other skills. Even though it may be challenging at times, pragmatist parents will give their children enough room to develop without constantly intervening to meet their own needs. 4. They make toxic jokes about you. All parents make fun of their kids from time to time, but when those so-called jokes turn into crude satire, meant to make fun of or denigrate their kids, this can be a big problem. Just because your parents have always made fun of your height or weight does not mean that you must accept this behavior. In the end, this is a demeaning strategy that will make you feel inferior to yourself. Instead of being sarcastic, a parent should be sincere and not criticize their child when they have a legitimate concern to discuss. 5. They cause you to justify terrible behavior. Did you think as a child that your parents abused you physically or emotionally because they thought you deserved it? If that's the case, you must still be defending unacceptable behavior on behalf of yourself. Children are forced to choose between two options when toxic parents are able to manipulate every circumstance and fact in their favor. Accept that their parent is wrong, or else they will feel powerless and take all the blame internally. Even children who are now adults typically select the latter option. They believe that some of their characteristics or actions must have sparked their parents' rage. Their self-esteem and image of themselves only suffer as a result of this mindset. They believe that their parents should treat them the worst they can. 6. They do not allow you to express negative emotions. Children will never be able to be assertive about their needs if their parents neglect their child's emotional needs and make light of their negative feelings. Helping your children focus on the positive aspects of the situation is perfectly acceptable. However, ignoring a child's negative emotions and needs can cause them to suppress these legitimate feelings, only for them to come out in distorted ways. This will only produce an adult who is incapable of emotional regulation and negative life management. 7. They always put their feelings first. Parents should not be under the impression that they hold all of the family's power and that only their wants and feelings should be taken into consideration. However, this outmoded way of thinking will not help parents and children develop positive relationships. Even though parents are ultimately responsible for making decisions about everything from dinner to vacation plans, it is important to consider the feelings of everyone in the family, including the children. The parents' ideas, opinions, and values are just as respectable as the children's. In contrast, toxic parents will frequently compel their children to suppress their own emotions in order to please them. 8. They co-opt your goals. Did one of your parents become so interested in everything you were doing that they took over or even did what you were doing? This may appear to be the behavior of a genuine parent interested in their child's life. However, it frequently hinders the child's ability to achieve their objectives. It will be much harder for you to reach your sales goal, for instance, if you have to sell 50 boxes of cookies at the same time that your mother decides to bake cookies and give them to the neighbors. If you allow your parent to continue abusing their power, this behavior can have a lasting negative impact on your life. 9. They use guilt and money to control you. Every child has, at some point, been the target of parental guilt trips, particularly during arguments. However, toxic individuals frequently employ this strategy. Your parent may still exert control over you as an adult by providing for you in ways that may be difficult for you to repay. They will attempt to blame everything they have done for you if you fail to live up to their expectations. Parents who are in good health are aware that their children do not owe them anything in particular in return for money or gifts, particularly when these things were not requested in the first place. 10. They give you the silent treatment. While it may be difficult to communicate when one is frustrated and angry, it is extremely harmful and immature to silence a child. Any relationship is hampered by this passive-aggressive treatment. Even though they didn't do anything wrong, it makes the recipient feel like they have to fix the problem. Before they are ready for a straightforward discussion to resolve the issue, a parent should excuse themselves if they are too agitated to have one. Parents who are toxic will never have mutual interactions that are supported by excellent listening and comprehension skills. 11. They ignore healthy boundaries. To protect their children, parents may even be required to conduct some snooping in certain circumstances. However, everyone, particularly teenagers, needs to be able to establish healthy boundaries for themselves. Toxic parents overstep these boundaries at every opportunity, not only losing their children's trust, but also straining their own positive relationship. A toxic parent, for instance, will use their children's personal belongings without their knowledge and open their child's door without first knocking. Parents absolutely have the right to ensnare their children, but not to the point where it becomes toxic. This establishes a pattern that hinders their children's ability to properly recognize and comprehend boundaries as they grow up. 12. They make you responsible for their happiness. One of the worst characteristics of a toxic parent is this. If one of your parents believes that you are to blame for their unhappiness and struggles, either directly or indirectly, then that parent has unrealistic expectations for your role in their life. No child ought to be held responsible for the happiness of their parents. In addition, parents should never assume that their children will give up on their ambitions and goals just to be happy. Adult children will have a hard time comprehending that we are all responsible for our own happiness if we are forced into this situation. It may seem impossible to cut ties with toxic people from your life, especially if one of them is a parent. However, if you want to be happy in life, it's important to deal with a toxic parent. It will be much more difficult to undo the emotional and mental harm that a toxic parent has already done to the child unless you actively investigate the matter. Positively, any toxic parent who identifies with any of the 12 points in this video can seek the assistance of a trained counselor in breaking their negative behavior patterns. That's all for now. Take care of your health and your inner world. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you in the next videos.